The Imitation of Christ, Book 1, chapters 11 through 14. Book 1, chapter 11, on how to acquire peace and on the desire to improve. We would indeed have peace if we would attend to our affairs. How can you remain in peace when you deliberately interfere in other people's business and seek worldly occupation, with seldom a thought to interior recollection? The humble and the single-hearted are truly blessed and will have abundant peace. The reason why the saints were so perfectly recollected is that they always sought to abstain from worldly despairs, leaving themselves free to give their whole heart to God. But we are absorbed in our own passions and too concerned with passing things. We seldom overcome even one single fault. We are slow to make progress and therefore remain cold and indifferent. If we died to self-love, soon we would enjoy spiritual things, and then we would experience heavenly contemplation. As it is, we do not force ourselves to overcome our passions and disorderly desires and to follow the path of the saints. And this is our greatest obstacle to contemplation. As soon as any little difficulty comes our way, we are easily cast down and turn to human consolation. If only we would exert ourselves and take a firm stand in this battle, we would see how God comes to our aid, for He is always ready to help those who put their trust in Him. He even provides occasions for us to do battle so that we will overcome and be victorious. If our religion consists only in outward observances, our piety will soon come to an end. We had better lay our axe to the root, that being purged from our passions, we may possess our soul in peace. If we would overcome one fault a year, we would soon be perfect. But often we find that we were better and purer when we first turned to God than after years supposedly spent in His service. Actually, our fervor and desire for virtue should increase every day as we grow older. But now it is considered wonderful if we still hold on to a spark of our first fervor. It is far easier to break evil habits at the outset, for then acts of virtue are done more easily and with a happy heart. It is not easy to break bad habits, and harder still to give up our own will. But if you do not overcome the little things, how do you expect to overcome the greater? Therefore, resist your evil inclinations at the start and break off bad habits, or little by little they will lead you into greater difficulties. If only you would think of the great interior peace you would have and how happy you would make others by doing good, you would be more eager to grow in virtue. Book 1, Chapter 12, on the advantage of not having everything our own way. It is good that everything is not always to our liking, for adversity makes people look into their hearts in order to realize that they are exiles and must not put their hope in any worldly thing. It is good for us to run into opposition and to have others think badly of us, even when our intentions are good. For these things help us to be humble and rid us of pride. Then we seek God more earnestly. Who alone knows our innermost self, when outwardly we are ignored and discredited by others? Therefore, people should rely so entirely on God that they have no need to look for human consolations when adversity comes. When people of good disposition are afflicted or tempted or distracted by evil thoughts, then they understand the need they have of God, and that without Him they can do nothing. Then, too, they grieve. while they sigh and pray because of the miseries they endure. They grow weary of this life and long for death in order to be with Christ their Lord. It will also be clear to them that there is neither perfect peace nor security in this world. Book 1, Chapter 13, on resisting temptation. We will never be free of trials and temptations as long as our earthly life lasts. For Job has said, "Is not the life of human beings on earth a drudgery?" Job chapter 7, 1. Therefore, we should always be on our guard against temptations, always praying that our enemy, the devil, who never sleeps but constantly looks for someone to devour, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, will not catch us off guard. No one in this world is so perfect or holy as not to have temptations sometimes. We can never be entirely free of them. Sometimes these temptations can be very severe and troublesome. But if we resist them, they will be very useful to us. For by experiencing them, we are humbled, cleansed, and instructed. All the saints endured tribulations and temptations and profited by them, while those who did not resist and overcome them fell away and were lost. There is no place so holy or so remote where you will not meet with temptation, nor is there anyone completely free from it in this life. For in our body we bear the wounds of sin, the weakness of our human nature in which we are born. As soon as one temptation or trial goes, another comes. We will always have something to suffer because we have lost our original state of happiness. Many try to fly away from temptations only to fall more deeply into them. For you cannot win a battle by mere flight. It is only by patience and humility that you will be strengthened against the enemy. Those who only shun them outwardly and do not pull them out by the roots will make no progress. For temptations will soon return to harass them, and they will be on a worse state. It is only gradually, with patience and endurance, and with God's grace, that you will overcome temptations sooner than by our own efforts. When you are tempted, seek the advice of a wise counselor, and do not yourself be harsh with persons who are tempted. Rather be happy to console them, as you would wish to be consoled. The beginning of all evil temptations is inconsistency of mind and insufficient trust in God. Just as a ship without a rudder is tossed about with every storm, so those who are negligent and abandon their good resolutions are tempted in diverse ways. Gold is tried by fire, and the upright person by temptation. Often we do not know what we can do until temptation shows us what we are. In the early stages of temptation, it is easy to be watchful, for it is easier to overcome the enemy if he is not allowed to enter into our mind, but is resisted and shut out as soon as he knocks. As someone has said, resist the beginning, the cure applied afterward is too late. This is how temptation is. First, we have a thought, followed by strong imaginings, then the pleasure and evil emotions, and finally consent. This is how the enemy gains full admittance, because he was not resisted at the outset. The slower we are to resist, the weaker we daily become, and the stronger the enemy is against us. Temptations differ with different people. Some are greatly tempted in the first stages of turning to God. Some have it in their later days. while still others have it all their lives. And there are also those who are only lightly tempted. But it is all part of God's plan for us, whose wisdom and justice knows each person's state and orders all things rightly for the salvation of his elect. We should not be discouraged when tempted, but turn in fervent prayer to God, who, in his infinite goodness and compassion, will help us in all our needs. St. Paul has said that, together with the trial, he will also provide a way out and the strength to bear it. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. Let us humbly submit ourselves to God in all trials and temptations, for it is the humble and submissive that he will save and exalt. Psalms 34:19. Through temptations and trials, our spiritual progress is tested. If we are fervent and devout and unaware of any difficulties, it is no credit to us. But if we endure patiently in the time of temptation or adversity, then our spiritual advancement is apparent. Some people are kept from grave temptations, and yet every day they fall into the same petty faults. God, in his merciful goodness, permits this to keep them humble, so that they will not trust in themselves, seeing how easily they are daily overcome. Book 1, Chapter 14, on avoiding hasty judgments. Watch over yourselves, and take care not to judge the actions of other people. We gain nothing by criticizing others, but often are mistaken and thereby offend God. But to judge yourself and your own actions is always profitable. We often judge a thing according to our own preference, and therefore our judgment is emotional rather than objective. This stubbornness in our own opinions would not dominate our judgments if our hearts were set on God. But there is often in us some inward tendency or outward attraction which carries us along with it. Many are secretly self-seeking and therefore do their will and not the will of God, though sometimes they are unaware of it. As long as things go their way, they appear to be at peace. But if they meet opposition, they become impatient and depressed. Often through diversities of opinions, dissension springs up between friends and neighbors, and even among religious and devout persons. An old habit is not easily overcome, and people are reluctant to be led beyond their own views. If you cling more to your own reason or will rather than to humble obedience of Jesus Christ, you will only with difficulty become an enlightened person. For it is the will of God that we be perfectly subject to him, rising above our own reason and will by an ardent love.